Hello, everybody, and welcome to Back and Forth Monthly Sunday Movie Review, the episode where once a month, I show Gecko Man one of my favorite movies. This month, what are we doing, Gecko Man?
We're going to be talking about Ford v Ferrari.
Yes, Ford v Ferrari, movie that came out November of 2020, I believe.
I wouldn't know the answer
Came
to
out
that.
the same weekend as Frozen 2. Why do I know that? Well, I went to watch it in the theaters, and there was a line out the door. So many people, and they're all like 12 or younger, and I was like, why are all these little kids going to watch Ford v Ferrari? And then I see the giant sign for Frozen 2, and I was like, so I was the odd one out, not them. All right, well, after that little anecdote, let's get into it.
All right.
Let's start this one off by talking about the acting, because it was a star-studded cast.
It was.
That was so good and just such a fun interaction with so many great actors that we've seen in so many different roles.
Yeah.
We got to see them, interact with each other.
I really like, what's his name? Ken Miles.
Ken Miles, Christian Bale.
Christian Bale, Ken
Yeah.
Miles, yeah.
He
did
does
such a good
oh my
job. I
goodness.
loved every moment he was on screen.
Yeah, he plays it like, not only does he play a good like hothead a little bit, you know, he doesn't just like play that good, but he like plays the emotional parts where like he's having to make hard decisions so well at the same time. And when he's driving and he has like that intense look on his face,
Yeah.
oh my goodness.
I will say I also loved how he would talk to the other drivers when he was in the car.
Yeah.
That was so
Loved
good.
his personality. Ken Miles' personality is just so good.
Yeah,
I heard I've on the little I've read about the original guy Ken Miles. He was like that. Like he was very much like he would talk to the other drivers and like not necessarily they played on it a little bit more than he probably did. Their ability to hear him, of course, the first race he's in, like very little chance like they'd be able to hear each other.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, apparently that guy did like to talk a little smack when he was driving. And then playing off that, Matt Damon does such a good job as Carl Shelby. And not only does he do like a good job, but their chemistry is so good.
Yeah.
Like I think that's if it's not the only movie they play in together, it's one of a very few. And wow, like I know they're both great actors, but they play together just incredibly. And they would play off of each other so well. Like there's never this. So many times, especially when you're having so many emotional or like very scenes where people are getting angry, or where they're or like one is trying to calm the other one down, or like delivering bad news. Like there's so many times that can feel awkward in movies because one actor isn't matching what the other person's doing. But they both, every single time they get each other thinking about it, they just match so well that everything hit so hard.
I think one of my favorite scenes with those two together was possibly when they were fighting.
Yeah, the fight is so good. Yeah, like the full-on fight. They fight a lot, but yeah, it's so good. And then like
them just wrestling to the ground.
Then apparently, I was reading that the actors just kind of like after the fight was over, and they're like laying there. They did all of that, like what's it called? Came up with that on the spot.
Really?
Yeah. Like they were supposed to. They would think of them just cutting away at that point, or like cutting to them sitting on the porch or whatnot, but they just decided to keep going, and
wow,
it was so good.
Wow. I did like how they're just laying there, and then his wife comes up.
He's like, can I get a physics? He's like, no, don't give him one. He can get his own. So good. And then, let's think. Maybe my favorite scene with them together is when he has to tell him, I don't know, this will spoil the movie for people, but when he has to tell him that he's not going, and like you can tell how hard like that's what I say, Matt Damon does such a good job, but you can tell how hard it is for him to tell him that. And Christian Bale like just matches that tone so well that like, oh my goodness.
Even when they're not together, you can still feel you still get the sense of just like them playing just being able to act out together in a way. It's
moving on.
so good.
I want to talk about John Bernthal for a minute here. For you Marvel fans out there, you'll know who he is. He plays in The Punisher, Frank Castle. Oh my goodness, he does such a good job.
He does.
Like, I get that you're supposed to like him, like he's supposed to be the likable one of the executives and whatnot, but I mean, I just like him so much. Like, let's start with like his main scene that we see him, right, when he's proposing his plan to Henry Ford, and it's not going so great, right? Oh my goodness. Well, like, the acting made that scene so much better, right? Like, you could tell, like, it's awkward, it's, and he's going for it, and then it's like just falling apart, and he's like, oh my goodness, how do I save this? And he has to just, like, play his ace in the hole, like the big idea, and he just plays that so well. And then, is there anything else you want to say on him?
Yeah, I really like that scene. I also liked him coming up and talking with Matt Damon.
Yeah.
I like that too. Like, that was good. I liked almost every time he talked with Matt Damon. There was just this.
And they do I mean, we're not talking characters right now, but they do such a good job of setting up his character to where they can do those shots where, like, in the middle of the race, when something happens that one executive doesn't like, they can, like, show them, and, like, his facial expression, just like every time, just totally his character, how his character would be, and it's just so good. But, like, talk about other executives, I don't think we can not talk about Henry Ford.
Oh yes,
played by Tracy Letts. Oh my goodness. I think I've only seen him in one other movie. I did a little research into him for this, because I was like, man, this guy's so good. Like, he has to act, but he's really not. He apparently is a screenwriter. Oh. And has acted in a lot of plays, because he's written a lot of plays. And so he's acted on Broadway and stuff. But really, the only other big movie he's been in is Lady Bird, which is the only thing I've seen him in. Recently he did Little Women, but I haven't seen the remake of Little Women. But oh my goodness, he plays Henry Ford so well. Like, I've seen quite a bit of just old footage of Henry Ford the first and second, and he nailed it. The mannerism, so good. But just like that type of character, like, he does such a good job. Just like the first time we see him, he walks in, just like commands respect. Everyone just looking at him, and he walks over there, just like, shut it off, shut it down. And then he gives his speech, such a good speech. And then, oh my goodness, the scene with the first time he talks to Carol Shelby. Yeah. And I love that whole office scene where it's like, no, it's not the first time.
It was, I believe it was the second time.
Yeah, when he talks to Carol Shelby in his office after they fail the first time, right?
Oh, yeah.
I love the camera work. We're not talking camera work here, but the camera work's so good. But his acting is so good. He's literally just sitting there, and then he, like, gets up and walks to the window, right? Absolutely nails it. And then when he's riding in the car,
that's got to be a really good moment. I can't decide which one's my favorite, though, the car or the office.
Yeah.
I love both those scenes. I love when he's trying to get into the car. He's like, grab my hand.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's so good. And, like, yeah, just like the ability to act that in the car, right? Like, he's not actually driving at, 200 plus miles an hour in a car, right? It's all CGI and stunt work, but oh my goodness, he acts it like you feel like you're there with him. And then going back to Matt Damon, he does such a good job in that scene too, where it's so awkward at one point, and Matt Damon, like, acts how you would act, right? Like, oh my goodness, trying to break the tension, but also trying to get a point across. Like, oh my goodness, so well done. And then of course we have to talk about who is kind of set up as the villain of the executive, Leo Beebe, who was played by Josh Lucas. I don't know much about Josh Lucas. I think I've seen him in a couple of things back in the day, but he does a great job. Like, he plays that just unlikable, uppity up guy so well.
Yeah, just see, that's I'm going to go a little off track here, but that's what I liked about this movie, because not only were they fighting, how well they showed of them trying to beat a race against a competitor.
Yeah.
They also did a very good job of showing the infighting.
Yeah, and all just like the little stories, right?
Yeah.
The story of what's going on in Ken's life, We know that, like, he wants to be a racer, but there's, he needs to pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, the little stories about Carroll Shelby, he's literally swindling people to make money, right? Like, he's barely making by, but acting like, he's living on who he was. And then, all the infighting and Ford and just everybody trying. It was almost like, like the ship sinking and everyone's just trying to grab what they can, right? Because nobody actually thought that they were going to be able to win. So,
yeah. I must say, though, one of my favorite scenes with, what's his name?
Don't know his name. BB or
with BB,
Josh Lucas. Yep.
Is when he got locked in the office.
Yeah. Yeah.
How he was like, he wanted to talk with him, and then Matt Damon's character is just like, no. Just locks him in there.
Yeah.
That was so good. And also even all almost, I personally felt like every actor and every character had a little something. Even the actor who played that one guy who held the door to keep BB out.
I love that kid. Yeah, he's so, man, I can't remember his name at the top of my head. Was it Charles? No.
Roy.
I don't remember. I don't remember his name. He had some name like that. But Don. I think his name's Don.
Is it Don?
I think so. I don't think I ever
caught a name off that.
Pop says his name a couple of times, but I can't remember. Yeah, he does such a good job. But no, that character, locks him in the closet in the office. It's so funny. I like him a lot. Just like a young kid along for the ride. Moving on to some other people that played some smaller roles. Pop, played by Roy McKinnon.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely love his character. He does such a good job of just, playing that, like, kind of grandfatherly role, but also just like good friend,
Yeah.
Yeah, just really good casting choice there. And then I really like Ken's wife.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to try and pronounce her name. Catriona or something.
Yep. Forgive us for the mispronunciations. I can't even say the
enjoyed
word.
her a lot. And his son, who's played by the kid that plays in A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I loved him in A Quiet Place, and so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved his son. I loved his wife. I love the scene where she's just like so mad at him and just starts driving, starts racing down the road.
You like to race? I'll show you racing. Yeah, and once again, just had such good chemistry with Matt Damon.
Oh yeah.
I
think almost everybody in the movie had good chemistry.
Yeah,
with, like everybody.
The acting choices were just so good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of does it for acting. I mean, Enzo Ferrari, the guy that acted him, did a really good job. Mm-hmm. Everyone just does a superb job, but
yeah,
like those are the ones that really stood out to me for sure.
I will say one small thing here. I think, me personally, I think even the smaller characters that we just see for a couple minutes and stuff, those actors, I think they did a pretty good job playing those small actors because,
it's like the Italian people where they're freaking out about the watches.
Yes.
or even the other drivers.
Oh,
like, yeah. I personally think, I don't know who plays him, but the guy who plays the main driver for Ferrari, such a good casting choice because he's like basically the villain, right?
Yeah.
Of the whole movie is this driver that we never ever see. And so that choice of who was going to play that had to be a really just like he had to look a very specific way, right? Mm-hmm. He had to look like the way he did. He looked like a guy who would drive a Ferrari, right? Just like perfect face, perfect hair, and just like the costuming was so good. Like he just looked like he was way better than them, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing with the car, right? Of course, it's based on a car, right? It's gonna look like the car, but like that's such a cool idea. It's like this villain that we literally never ever see. We hear about, we hear Ferrari won this race, Ferrari won that race. and we meet Enzo Ferrari, but we don't actually meet who he's racing against until he's racing him. And they just picked a great character. And we're getting into storytelling here, but just so well done.
We're getting a little off track here.
So let's just lead if you're done with acting.
One more thing I want to say, as you were saying about the acting choice for Ferrari, the Ferrari driver, I think it was good as well for just Ferrari himself.
Yeah,
because he looks like this mob boss guy, and it's like, oh, what a better way of like showing a company that they're racing against to be the bad guy. So that was pretty good.
So I want to get into storytelling a little bit and the plot and everything now. And to start that off, so when we meet Ferrari, the Enzo Ferrari, right? He's literally like sitting at a picnic table basically in his shop, just watching his cars get built. Oh my god, it's just such a good way to introduce a character like that. Yeah, he felt like a mob boss. He felt like just so powerful. And then like the way they had to go to an interpreter, just felt, they did such a good job of that room when they're negotiating, making it feel stuffy. Like you felt like you were almost claustrophobic with them, and the tension was so good. So the story as a whole, I mean, they're basing it off a story. As far as my limited research, they did a very, very good job of being accurate, but also telling like a story that worked so well. You have something to say?
How about going into something else here? How well do you think they showed for each character to tell? How well do you think they had each character show of their stories? Have them in almost every scene showing their stories.
Yeah, like I mean that goes like what I said with the acting is like everybody on all the characters just were so like you were so invested with them, and so every scene they just like tell their story so well, and at the same time they are telling this bigger story that like is when it comes to historical movies, it can be harder to like keep you engaged because a lot of times you know the outcome. Going into this, I don't know if you knew the outcome, but like I did going into watching it the first time.
I knew, I've heard of the outcome before, long time ago.
Yeah.
And so I had a sense for the outcome, and like I knew it was going to happen, but I also had this sense of like, they just did a good job of making you feel like it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. And like, they do such a good job of just piling up like the odds against them, right?
Yeah.
And you knowing how difficult it will be, like, and then they don't even mention that until we're about 12 minutes into the movie, right? They've already done so much character building with these two characters. We know how stubborn they are and how like they want to win so bad, whether it be Carol trying to win, because he couldn't do it himself, with a team, or it'd be Ken like proving himself. And so like you had this sense like, okay, they can do this, but like, wow, it's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
And then they also do a good job of building up Henry Ford's character to where when he like I love the scene when he decides to go race Ferrari. Like,
would you consider that your favorite scene?
Yes, that is my favorite scene.
Okay.
When Punisher guy, can't remember his name suddenly, John, what is his name in the movie? Is talking to Henry Ford and like telling him what Ferrari said, and you can just like see Henry Ford being like, because he respects his father so much, but he doesn't want to be known as his father's son. Like he wants to be his own person.
Yeah.
And just like seeing him just like take the not the insult, but like the hit his ego, and be like, okay, well, we're gonna beat Ferrari. Just such a good scene. I don't want to get into camera work too much, but my goodness, it's so good in that scene.
One of my favorite moments, my favorite part of the movie has such an amazing storytelling is when Ken Miles was alone in the garage. And he's just naming everything that goes wrong in the race, and it's just like, oh my goodness, it's such a good way of like showing that Ken Miles is, yes, he's upset and like all this. He's working on cars.
Yeah.
He's listening to the race, naming everything that goes wrong. He's like, he's the one that needs to be doing
Exactly.
this.
Like they do such a good job, yeah, of like making you be like, because like he had just like reached a milestone of his own. Like he had accepted the fact that he wasn't going to be there, and he had done it in a way he never would have before. Like he had come so far to that point, and then he's just sitting there, still working on these cars. Like he's getting them ready for next time. Basically, is what he's doing, improving upon something, even though he can't be the one where they're racing, and he doesn't know if next year he's going to be the one they're racing, and he's just listening to the race, and I mean they set that up so early, right? With him and Shelby, right? Like, wait, don't do it yet. Don't do it. Love that with their character development, right? From the very start, because it shows how in sync their characters are, right? Where like they both are drivers and are the best and understand it so well that they're on the same page every single time. And it just sets that up, and that plays throughout the whole movie so well. That I love that scene. Oh my goodness,
that is a really good scene. You also gotta admit that I like to frame that. With the wrench.
That's another like plot point of that wrench that you see, right? You see what happens at the start. You see it framed in his office after he says, frame it, and then you see where it ends, and that's just another little story that they tell so well. I love how all the little stories just like come to really nice conclusions.
Oh yeah,
sad conclusions sometimes, but we don't need to get into that yet.
Not yet.
Don't want to spoil too much. So, what's the other plot stuff? Storytelling. I just want to give a shout out here to James Mangold, who directed the movie. I thought he had written the movie, but apparently he didn't. He writes a lot of the movies that he directs. So I thought he had, but he did not. But he does. He was kind of I wouldn't say an unknown, but he hasn't done a whole lot of directing in his life. But yeah, he has like two of my favorite movies I've directed in my head, so that's interesting. We'll get to the other one later on. Maybe that'll be fall.
Yeah.
We'll do that movie. Such a good movie. But anyways, I just want to shout him out. Anything else you want to talk about story before we go into
nothing else. I guess one thing actually is I do want to talk a little bit about the infighting in Ford between.
This could lead really good into our next segment.
Like, I just love it. Every single time those two were like arguing or fighting or something, you could just tell that the way they portray their characters and stuff, that the characters hate each other.
Yeah. I mean, that leads me to another scene I really like, and when they're unveiling the Mustang, and Shelby's supposed to come speak, and it's the first time Ken meets Leo. Leo. Yeah. So good. And it just like shows his character like right away, like hey, get your hands off that, he's just like so uppity up, and Ken is literally the opposite, but he's way hot-headed, so something's gonna happen. So good. I think my favorite point for that kind of story to happen was when the main race happened. He calls and he's like, he tells that guy to write whatever he wrote on the sign. Easy miles.
And it's just like, and you could just see the disappointment. And oh man, I'm doing horrible on names today. Shelby, yeah. You could just see like, why'd you do that?
Let's get into characters now. So we talked the acting, which we talked a lot about them in the story, where we mentioned them quite a bit. But let's get into like highlighting some of like what we love about our characters. So, we talked about the chemistry with the acting, but like that just fed so much into the chemistry with the characters, and like these characters who they're on a team, literally going for this goal, and they have to have a great chemistry. And wow, with like I said from the start, they showed the chemistry between Shelby and Miles, where they are so similar, and but the differences are what make them stronger too. and their racing team from the start. And then we see the chemistry with, or lack thereof, with the Ford team.
Yeah.
I don't know. Ken's story throughout the movie is just so good, and like I love how every aspect pays off at some point. Like they, Christian Bale's always been good at like playing those like obsessive type characters, and they just do such a good job of like his character like obsessing over all these little things, but every detail like pays off at some point in the movie. Like when he's just sitting there like, talking, listening to the race and saying what's going wrong. Like those are like little things that he had mentioned earlier, we need to do this, we need to do that. And then when they're there, that's what goes wrong because like,
I even like the chemistry between team just working on the car.
Yeah.
Just every time Ken just rolls up and he's just like, we need to do this, this, and this. Like every time he steps out of the car, he has to say something about the car.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
That was so good. And like, it just shows more about Ken's character and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, he knows cars.
Yeah. And like he knows that car so well. He was the one who drove it, every time. He's the guy who knows exactly the drag, the wind lifts, where it's losing power, where is it gaining power, where the traction needs work, where all that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And he like Shelby says, right, when he's trying to get him there the first time, he's like, he knows this car better than anybody. He's the one we need there, and it comes through so well. Every single time. And like the leadership that he takes in that too, like all the pit team like respects him so much because of that.
Yeah.
Let's see. So Cheryl, a couple things about Carol Shelby's character that I didn't get to haven't mentioned yet. I like how he's a pretty deep character, but he's so archetypal at the same time. Like even like the way he drives, the way he, like he's a racer. From the minute we first see him, right? He's the first character we see, and like just the way he drives away from the doctor's office, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then that comes full circle at the very end of the movie, which I love, right?
Oh yeah.
And then the way he drives a plane, the way he talks to people, like he's so who he is, right? And I always like having a couple of those type of characters in a movie, and he just plays off of then Ken so well because of that. And that's why they, butt heads, but that's also why they're so good together. Just something I hadn't mentioned. I don't know if there's we've talked so much about characters before. I don't know if there's anything else.
Nothing else really. I mean,
I guess I will say they did even like a good job, like you had said, with all the actors of all the lesser used characters, but they also did a really good job of like telling those characters' story and like them all like having like little culminations, like even the techs that are wanting to, have all the equipment test the car.
Yeah.
And then when they realize like, oh, this is the better way to do it and how we can learn so much more just by taping yarn to a car. And he's like, I love that. Like, he's just like, oh my goodness, I see it.
That was so good.
It's like, they did just such a good job of even those little characters, like having their little culmination and just made it feel so much. Just made it such a nice watch, where everybody gets a little moment,
and every moment you see was just worth it to watch. Like,
all right, so now we're gonna move into my two favorite categories. I still haven't decided which one I want to talk about first, but I think I know what we have to end with. So we're going to talk visuals next.
Oh, really? Okay.
I really wanted to leave this for the end, but the soundtrack is too good. We have to leave that for the end.
All right. Visuals.
You know what? I was going to change it, but no.
Don't you dare. We're sticking with visuals now. Amazing.
They also go hand in hand, so I felt like I mentioned soundtrack a lot because I'm going to say very similar things. But yeah, the visuals in this movie were so good. The camera work is amazing, whether it be a high intensity race or just a simple moment with people talking, the camera work was fantastic. I think I'll talk the racing first. From the first race we see, it did such a good job of putting us in the race and in the time period, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
even the camera work was very similar to the way cameras were used at those races at that time period. And like, if you think of like a newspaper clipping from that time, and the picture that would be taken, like that's what they showed, like with the cars coming at them, oh my goodness, it looked so good. They do such a good job of, well, like I've mentioned, in like fight scenes, like in these race scenes, like you seeing exactly what you need to see, so I mean, it goes along with the announcing and stuff that you know exactly what's going on. Like they can't show you the entire race, or we'd be sitting in the theater for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Twice. But
No.
but like, yeah, they do such a good job of showing you what you need to like know exactly what's going on in the race in with the car, with your characters. Yeah. And they do such a good job of like minimizing how many cuts they had to do. And so in those races, like they were able to have like draft be draft, and the power of the car like feel real, where it wasn't like he's behind him, he goes going around him, cut, now he's in front of him, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like they had these long takes where he's drafting behind a car, he uses that to be able to get around that car and slingshot him towards the next car, and then they were in a race with that car. He now has all the forces working on his car that he didn't have before, right? And and then it's like power versus power, and it's just like they could have very easily like showed the same story, but you not felt like it was as real, right?
Yeah.
But it just felt so real because they literally were racing cars. You can tell they just did seamless CGI. Yeah,
I think probably my favorite camera shots were in the final race.
yeah,
Like they were so good. Every time, like when Ken would drive through smoke, that was scary.
Oh
like,
my goodness! Yeah, the first time he drives through the smoke, you're just like,
I was scared.
yeah, you knew something was gonna happen. Oh my goodness, that was freaky. And then they do such a good job too of taking your eyes off the road when they need to. Where like there's one time, I think it's it's his first time he sets the lap record, and so he had the door trouble, right? And then he's going again, and it's his second lap after he's going, and he's coming up on the first turn, after the big straight, and they take you down to where you could just see the speedometer, and then they come up with the turn just right there, and you just like, and then they go down to his feet, and so you see him shift, brake shift, and it was just like, oh my goodness, like it like put you so much in that moment of he's having to do, just like when he was talking to his son, like he has his mark, and like we don't feel like we have no control of what's going on, but he has like full control. It was spectacular.
That was some more good camera work of showing him dealing with the door and the turns and all that stuff.
Well, and I just loved every time that like they showed the feet too, and like him shifting, like they just like really put you in the car with him,
I also like the shots a lot of the times when he's driving right next to a car, and you just see those cool shots. You can still see both of them, and you just can see so clearly what they intend to show.
And that takes me to my favorite shot in the races, when we see the Ferrari car out in front, right? And there's just like smoke behind him, or it's raining like crazy, right? So you can barely see, and then we just see two headlights, and Ken's car just appear out of nowhere right behind him, or right beside him.
Oh
wow, that shot was incredible. And it also,
me for a second,
and it also calls back, remember, to when Shelby says, talking to Ford, like what it takes, right? And he's going through, and he's like, it's not, it wasn't, I was going to say Ken. Yeah, it's when he's talking to Ken, and he's telling him what it takes to drive. And he's like, so you're having to drive at night, in the rain, and cars will just come out of nowhere. That's exactly what he said. And then that happens, and it's Ken. And oh my goodness, that shot is so good.
It is really good. Even all the shots of where you see like him getting coming up on someone like right behind them and stuff, or like someone's coming up on him right behind him and stuff. Those were amazing shots too. Like I think the best shots were in the races.
Yeah. There's some really good shots outside the races that we'll talk about in just a sec. I do want to hit on a race we haven't mentioned, which is the race leading up. I'm blanking on what it's called, but the one he did right before Le Mans.
Oh, that's right.
Anyways, I'm not going to give away what happened to Le Mans. But
there's a race.
He was going for the Triple Crown, right? And the first two, we see the second one. That race, because it's it's a shorter race. I think they said it's a 24 lap or 24 plus 1 or something.
Yeah, something like that.
And we get to see a lot of like desperation in the race.
Oh yeah,
especially from other drivers, and that like was causing havoc for him. So like, there's like the one guy who basically causes the wreck in front of him, and he's just like making fun. It's like, what are you doing? You know?
That was so good.
And then the other guy who's like trying to just muscle him out of the way, and he's just like, okay, if you're gonna do that, I'm just gonna let you go, And the guy wrecks. Just all that. Such good camera work, such good use of like, yes, you're in this big race, but it is still you against another driver sometimes, right? And yeah, I really like that race. That, like, from a storytelling standpoint, that race is like just as good as some of the bigger races that meant so much more. But
yeah,
even though it was smaller. But moving on from the races to some other things, I love the camera work in close quarters that they use. Every time we're in like an office or a meeting or whatnot, they do such a good job of setting up like Henry Ford's character just by like the shots, right? Like they set him up as this like large imposing man with like a lot of like gaps between him and other people, and it's just like such a good like disconnect. And it's really interesting, I think, that as Shelby grows as a character and like learns like that he needs to play along sometimes, and he needs to help Ken in these ways. He actually was like, the gap between him and Henry Ford like lessened, like he was becoming more like him, I think. And I think what they were going for, and that's what I got out of it. And it was just such a cool way to like show that. They never talk about that, but that's what they show visually.
Yeah.
And oh my god, yeah, all the camera work inside the buildings was so good.
It was
showing like, even when he's sitting in the waiting room waiting to go in, and showing things from his perspective was super unique. And then like the camera moving with that lady who's running around, and
it's just, that movie really showed a lot of new things in my opinion. Like,
that reminds me of, and this will kind of lead into soundtracks as we're kind of wrapping up the visuals here. I love the pacing of, whether it be the character, the story, and camera work when we get to Italy, when they're going to Ferrari to buy Ferrari.
Oh,
like that happens so fast, and like it's really fast. Like the way they walk, everything's getting done really quick, and like they're like, get this camera out of here, everything. And then the cameraman just like racing to get to Fiat. I don't know. Do they even say Fiat?
No, they do. They do.
Oh, yeah, they do. They do later. And then, and they talk about it. But anyways, when he's racing to get to Fiat, just like the pacing of that, because like that could have seemed really sluggish in the movie, but they paced it so well that it told the story very quickly, but also like left their time for you to be like, what's going to happen, still. Because that's one thing I didn't know going into the movie. I knew Fiat owned Ferrari now, but I didn't know how that all went down.
Yeah.
And I knew Ford didn't own Ferrari, so I knew that they weren't going to buy them, but I wasn't sure exactly how it was going to happen. And I had no clue that Ferrari played them like that to get a better deal from Fiat. So that part was really cool watching in the first time. And I love the soundtrack in that. So that's the song that I played for you before you watched it. It's like, it's a soundtrack that sounds very much like Pink Panther, like detective, like in that era too, right? 1950s, 1960s just sound to it that just like makes you like just draws you in this newspaper reporter gumshoe detective type, and oh my goodness, so such good pacing, acting, visuals, and the soundtrack just shows that so well.
Yeah. Even the starting, like almost, the entire movie has such an amazing soundtrack that you're just like, it fits perfectly with every scene. Starting soundtrack, the ending soundtrack, it's just so good.
The soundtrack, like I don't know, there's other soundtracks that I might like more for what they do for the movie, but I don't think there's another soundtrack that plays off the movie and just goes with every scene, that because there's times that there is silence, but the soundtrack goes with every scene so well. And it doesn't do a whole lot of like pushing the story forward, which I love in soundtracks, and that's why some other soundtracks I might prefer, but it usually comes along with the scene. And that's one reason, like, I think a lot of people notice the soundtrack in that movie is because it is louder than a lot of soundtracks are. Like, a lot of soundtracks are more subdued, even like Wrath of Man, which is like a big booming soundtrack that I love, but it's still like very much behind the scene, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this soundtrack, like, it'll come along with the scene and then just like is in your face for a second. Like when they're I literally think the song's called Driving in the Rain, but when they're driving in the rain and it's like he's coming up on Ferrari, then the shot I was talking about happens, and then this like intense battle is ensuing. The soundtrack comes in, and then it just like hits hard. And it's so loud, and it just goes with exactly what's happening so well. Oh my goodness, it's amazing. And then like the little points when it's just him at home. I love that soundtrack. I think it's 7,000 RPMs, when the first time they take the car to 7,000 RPMs. That soundtrack so good. The scene when he's sitting alone in the thing listening to the, oh my gosh, I think that's called Le Mans 66. I think so. That one's called. Oh, I love that song. And it's the exact same song when his wife comes and they start dancing, and oh my goodness, so good.
Yes. Are you done?
No, I'm not, but go ahead.
I actually wanted to talk about the 7,000 RPM part right there. And it is so good. I'm having a bit of a hard time remembering it right now, but I still remember that it was so good. So good.
Yeah.
And it's one of those soundtracks that has you on basically the edge of your seat right there.
Yep.
And I will say that for this movie, I listened very hard for the soundtrack. I have a hard time listening to soundtracks because I'm so focused on what's happening on screen. But this movie, I really felt like I could actually listen to the soundtrack while watching the movie.
Yeah.
It was so good. Even the intense parts, like the rain and the whole moment when he appears, I think it amplifies the amount of like stress you felt, the amount of horror you felt in that moment, because you're like, he just came out, he just appeared. Oh my goodness. And even the starting soundtrack does a good job of not moving the story, but just helps you kind of get into the moment of like, oh, so this is kind of the story.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
So yeah, Marco Beltrami is one who does the soundtrack. And he wasn't really on my radar. I'd seen some movies that he had done the soundtrack for. This was the first one that like I was like, I love this soundtrack, and I started like seeing what things he had done, and he has now quickly become one of my favorite because he does the soundtrack for the other movie that we will be doing later with the same director that I don't want to mention yet. But he also does
mention it, but
no, I haven't said the name yet.
Really.
It came out. Anyway, but it came out on March 3rd of 2017. But 2018. Same day. Do you know what else came out that day?
I don't.
Kong Skull Island, but that's not the movie. It's the other one that came out the same day. Anyways, I forgot what I was talking about. It's Marco Beltrami. He does the soundtrack for A Quiet Place.
Oh,
and A Quiet Place too.
That's why it sounded so like similar to.
Yeah.
I was like, why does this sound so similar to something I've listened to before?
Yeah, he's so good. He just brings he brings so many of those sound, like he does. Yeah, trying to say too many things at once here. He can bring a soundtrack that, like in A Quiet Place, right, with so much silence, he can have that subdued soundtrack, right, that comes along with it, that drives the movie so well. Whereas in this movie, he can do that the kind of opposite, where it's this movie that is louder, but also doesn't really drive the movie. It more just supports the movie, supports what they're saying, supports the acting. Just, yeah.
I never felt like the soundtrack was pushing the movie. It was just there to support it, and so it was so good. Any specific soundtrack you want to talk about here?
My favorite song.
Yeah, your favorite.
So, well, the soundtrack in general, just what I love. I absolutely love driving to the soundtrack. I know it sounds cheesy, but I love driving to the soundtrack. My favorite song would have to either be, I'd probably choose. I mean, so the one I showed you was, it's called Ferrari Factory, I think. Yeah, Ferrari Factory, which is one of my favorites.
It's one of your favorites.
But I think my favorite is Chasing Bandini.
Really?
Which is the second time he has to catch Bandini. And it is that or Night Driving. I don't know. One of the two. They're very similar. And yeah.
7,000 RPM for me.
7,000 RPM, so good. Yeah. So good. That's probably, that's, I don't know. Yeah, they're all incredible. But the whole soundtrack is just so good.
Yeah. Just
all right. So anything else you want to say? Whole movie as a jump. Anything you want to say about the whole movie before we get into our final scores?
I think we tore every piece of paper off this thing.
Yeah, I think everybody knows we're going to give this a high score. This movie, I highly, highly recommend it. You don't have to be a car person. I love driving. I'm not a car guy. I am not a car guy.
I'm definitely not a car guy.
But this movie gives you all the feels that you get when you're driving, all that. So if you're a car person, if you love driving, you'll love it. But at the same time, you don't really have to be. I know so many people that it is just so well acted, so well directed, so well shot. The soundtrack is beautiful. The story is literally so good, so emotional. I bawled in this movie both times I watched it. It's just incredible.
For me personally, watching this movie, I don't know it. I barely know anything about cars. I'm not a car person.
Yeah,
but
and that's another thing. You don't have to be a car person. When they talk about car parts and stuff,
exactly.
Like when they're talking about the brakes,
I
know what a brake pad is. I know what a caliper is. That's my extent of brake knowledge. But you knew what they were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I barely know what a brake pad is. But when they were talking about it, I was like, whoa! I actually
the drawings and everything all just make so much sense.
It does. It was so good. Yeah. And I also want to say that not even driving, for somebody who wants to make a movie, I recommend watching this.
For sure.
It just gives you so much information on how to do a shot, acting,
tell a story through every avenue of telling a story is basically done in this movie. I think you should probably give your rating first, because I don't want mine to influence yours.
What do you think you're?
I'm just saying, I love this movie, and I want you to give your
full on rating.
Yeah. Out of 100, what do you give this movie?
I was thinking about that. I was really debating what I wanted to put it at. Whether it be 1 out of 10, 9 out of 10. But I think
100.
That's true. Yeah. 1 out of 100, 99 out of 100. But I think I'm gonna actually put it 100 out of 100.
Oh my! Wow, that is so awesome.
I think it's my new favorite movie.
Yeah.
It's so good. like I said, I'm not a car person, but that movie pulls you in so well. And trust me, he's not pushing any money across the table.
Wow. That's my influence me. So I've been told as well between 99 and 100 out of 100. I think my 100 out of 100, like, I just can't. The thing is, like, I think it is that good.
Yeah.
But when we get into some other movies that I love and talk about them, I don't think it's quite as good as a couple of the ones that I have ranked 100 out of 100.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to give it a 99 out of 100.
Okay. Hey, that makes sense because, everybody's got their own taste.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah.
like, it is as close as you can get to being 100 out of 100.
So it's basically 99.99.
And I do think it's going to kick another movie that I have 99 to a 98.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
So, yes.
Yeah.
Because I think it's better. It's better than Batman Begins, but it's not quite as good as some of the other movies I have at 100 out of 100. So, that's why I'm going to put it 99. But, man, I enjoyed talking about this movie a lot.
It's a good movie.
I didn't bring my book. I don't know what we're doing next month.
Yeah.
It's,
we're doing something. We'll put it down in the comments below.
I think it's a Marvel movie. So is it Winter Soldier next month?
It is. It is
Yeah,
Winter Soldier next
It's
month.
a Marvel movie.
Yes.
So yeah, Winter Soldier will be in July, the first Sunday of July. Keep look out for that. There's a lot of movies coming out this month, so there might be a little extra one this month.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have to do Lightyear or something.
Oh,
Something fun. Maybe a fun little one.
Yeah.
But yeah. So keep your eyes open for that, and we will see you later this week.
Yeah. See ya.